Food prices have climbed over 30% in the last 3 years, and most home gardeners are still planting the same crops every single season without realizing there is a permanent solution already available to them. Not at a garden center, not behind some expensive subscription. Right now, in backyards, on patios, in raised beds no bigger than a parking space. Today, I'm covering 13 crops that produce 3 times more food than what most people are growing, from the same soil, the same water, the same effort, and no greenhouse required, no acres required, and number one on this list produces up to 200 pounds of food per plant per year. And almost nobody in the Western world is growing it. Stay with me. Because the bonus tip at the end of this video is the single most universal yield multiplier I know, and it applies to every crop on this list without exception. Real quick before we get into this, if you've been gardening for years and still walking away with harvests that don't match the effort you put in, this channel was built specifically for you. Not for people with perfect setups, not for people with unlimited space or unlimited time. For real gardeners with real limitations who want real food out of the ground. Hit that subscribe button right now. Every week, this channel delivers exactly what you need to grow more, waste less, and stop leaving food in the ground. Subscribe, and let's get into it. Crop 13. Warrigal Greens, tetragonioids. Most people have never heard of this plant. The ones who have usually know it as New Zealand spinach, but it actually originates across Australia and the broader Australasian region, and it was one of the first edible plants brought back to Europe on Captain Cook's voyages in the late 1700s. Here's what makes it extraordinary. Warrigal greens thrive in heat, drought, poor soil, and coastal conditions that would collapse most food crops. While your regular spinach bolts and dies in summer, this plant spreads, covering several square feet from a single planting, producing continuous harvests of young leaf tips across the entire warm season. Quick note before you eat them: blanch for 60 seconds in boiling water. That removes the oxalates entirely. After that, treat them exactly like cooked spinach, soups, stir-fries, sautéed with olive oil. Simple. One planting. All summer. And no replanting. That math speaks for itself. Have you ever had a leafy green crop completely fail on you in summer heat? Drop a yes in the comments and I read every single one. Crop 12. Groundnut Hopniss, Apios americana. This one carries a story most gardeners have never been told. Apios americana, called groundnut or Hopniss, is a native North American perennial vine that fed indigenous peoples across the eastern continent for thousands of years. It's also documented as one of the foods that kept early European colonists alive through their first winters in the New World. That is not a folk tale. That is recorded colonial history. The plant produces edible tubers strung along its root system like beads on a necklace. Nutty, starchy, protein-rich. And here's where it completely flips the situation on every other root crop you've grown. It's perennial. You don't replant it. The root system expands every year, producing more tubers each season from the same ground. The protein content of these tubers is roughly 3 times that of potatoes by weight, a figure sourced directly from USDA nutritional data. The vine also fixes nitrogen into your soil while it produces. It is actively improving your garden while you harvest from it edible flowers, edible beans, expanding tuber yield year after year, and without replanting. Crop 11, Oxalis tuberosa, the second most cultivated root crop in the Andes, exceeded only by the potato, almost completely unknown outside South America. Oca produces small waxy tubers in colors that look genuinely unreal: yellow, deep pink, red-orange. The flavor is where it gets interesting. Freshly dug oca is tangy and crisp, almost lemony because of naturally occurring oxalic acid. Leave those same tubers in direct sunlight for a few days after harvest, a traditional process called sweeting, and, and the flavor transforms. Sweet, starchy, buttery. 2 to 4 pounds of tubers per plant under good conditions. The growing season runs approximately 6 months, so this is a crop you plan for. And when harvest day comes, you're pulling one of the most visually extraordinary root vegetables in existence out of the ground. Which of these first 3 has surprised you most? Drop the number in the comments right now. 10 crops left on this list, and the next few are the ones most people walk past in nurseries every single season without knowing they can eat them. Make sure you're subscribed, and if you know a gardener who's been frustrated with their harvests, share this video. You might genuinely change their entire growing season. Let's keep going. Crop 10, Chayote, Sachium edule. 50 to 150 fruits, 1 vine, 1 season. Chayote is a vining crop from Mexico and Central America that, once established, becomes one of the most productive plants you can put in the ground. A single vine can cover an entire fence or trellis and produce relentlessly from midsummer through frost. The fruit is mild, slightly sweet, somewhere between a cucumber and an apple, and it works raw, roasted, steamed, or pickled. Here's the detail that separates chayote from every other crop on this list. You don't plant a seed. You plant the whole fruit, and the single seed germinates while still inside the intact fruit in the soil. That's not a gardening trick, that's just how this plant works. The vine also produces edible shoots, edible leaves, and starchy tuberous roots. Every part feeds you, from one planting. Perennial Leek, Allium amploprisum, and perpetual varieties. Standard leeks. Plant once, harvest once, replant every single year. Perennial leeks, so specifically perpetual cultivars and traditional Welsh strains, do something entirely different. Instead of producing 1 leek per plant, they produce clusters of daughter bulbs around the base. One planted offset in spring becomes 4 to 8 harvestable leeks by autumn. Leave the root base in the ground. Same roots multiply again next year, and the year after, and the year after that. Over 3 years. The one planted leek yields dozens of harvests from the same square foot of soil. 0 replanting, 0 seed cost. Just harvest and leave the roots. They're also significantly more cold hardy than annual varieties, surviving hard frosts that would destroy a standard leek crop entirely. Crop 8, the Okinawa Spinach, Ganura crepioides, green on top, vivid purple underneath, fully edible, and the more aggressively you harvest it, the denser and more productive it gets. Okinawa spinach is a perennial ground cover with one of the most distinctive appearances of any food plant you'll ever grow. The purple pigmentation is driven by anthocyanins, the same antioxidant compounds found in blueberries and purple cabbage, making this one of the most antioxidant-dense leafy greens available. Mild, slightly earthy flavor. Works raw in salads or lightly cooked. In colder climates, grow it as a container plant and bring it in for winter. In warm climates, it produces year-round from the same root system. This is not a plant you maintain. This is a plant that responds to harvesting by growing back harder. Are you growing any perennial food crops right now? Tell me under the comments. Where in the world are you gardening from? 7 crops down, 6 left. And the next one is the one I mentioned at the very start. The plant producing up to 200 pounds per year. If you've been waiting for it, here it comes. Subscribe if you haven't yet. Share this with a gardener who needs it. 6 crops left. Let's finish this. Crop 7, Luffa, Luffa aegyptiaca /cylindrica. You know it as the sponge in your shower. What nobody told you is that it's a food crop. Harvest loofah under 6 to 8 inches, and you have a mild, slightly sweet vegetable comparable to zucchini, used in stir fries and soups across East Asia, South Asia, and West Africa. It is a mainstream market vegetable in these regions. Leave it to mature, and it converts to the fibrous sponge most Western gardeners have always assumed was its only purpose. One vine reaches up to 30 feet in a season, 20 to 40 fruits per vine under good conditions. Harvest young, harvest often, and you have continuous food production from midsummer through frost. Let some fruits mature at the end of the season. Keep the sponges. One vine, two products. Zero waste. Crop 6, Katak Sauropus androgynous. Almost zero pest pressure. Continuous harvest every 2 to 3 weeks from the same shrub for years. Ikadak is a perennial shrub native to Southeast Asia, a staple market vegetable in Malaysia and Indonesia that is almost never crossed into Western home gardens. Small, rounded, tender leaves with a distinctly nutty flavor, often described as tasting like fresh green beans or raw peas, eaten raw or cooked. Here's the detail most people skip. The protein content, approximately 7 to 8% of fresh weight. Compare that to conventional spinach at roughly 3%. For a leafy green, that gap is significant. Established in a warm climate, one Katak shrub produces harvestable growth on a 2 to 3 week cycle year-round from the same root system for multiple years without replacement. That is the definition of set and produce. Crop 5, sweet potato greens, Ipomoea batatas. Every gardener knows sweet potatoes. Almost none of them know that the leaves are one of the fastest and most productive greens available. And in Southeast Asia and Sub-Saharan Africa, the greens are considered the primary crop, not the root. Up to 2 pounds of fresh greens per plant per week under good conditions. The more you harvest the growing tips, the more aggressively the plant branches. The flavor is mild, slightly sweet, performs exactly like spinach sautéed with garlic or added to soups. And here's where it completely changes your equation. Harvesting the leaves does not have to reduce your root yield. Managed correctly, you balance leaf and root production across the season. 2 separate harvests from one plant. You are already planning to grow sweet potatoes. Now you know you can start eating from them weeks before the roots are ready. 4. Cranberry hibiscus, Hibiscus acetosella. Most nurseries sell this as an ornamental. In West Africa, it's been grown as a food crop for centuries. The deep burgundy leaves are edible raw or cooked, tart, slightly tangy, with a flavor that genuinely resembles cranberry. Works in salads, teas, and stir-fries. Grows 3 to 5 feet tall in a single season. Every above-ground part of the plant, leaves, young stems, flowers, is edible because the Western market treats it as a decorative plant. You can find it at almost any nursery, usually for a few dollars. The yield per square foot is exceptional precisely because you're harvesting the entire plant continuously, not waiting for a fruit. It also attracts pollinators aggressively, which improves the productivity of every other crop growing within range. Would drop a yes in the comments if you've ever seen this plant at a nursery and had no idea you could eat it. Crop 3, Malabar spinach, Bacella rubrae. The moment temperatures climb, conventional spinach bolts, flowers, and becomes bitter and useless. Malabar spinach does the opposite. It thrives. This vining plant produces thick, glossy, succulent leaves on fast-climbing vines throughout the entire warm season. Trellis-trained, it yields dramatically more per square foot than almost any ground-level leafy crop, because you are harvesting vertically. A single vine produces continuous harvests every 10 to 14 days all summer. It's not a true spinach, it belongs to the Bacilliaceae family, but the flavor is mild. It cooks identically. and it carries high levels of vitamins A and C with substantial iron. The purple-stemmed variety, Bacella rubra, is visually striking enough to function as a garden ornamental, productive and beautiful from the same plant. If this list is giving you something real, subscribe right now. Not at the end, right now. Because later has a way of becoming never. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications. Crop 2, Moringa oleifera, 6 feet tall, 60 days from seed, producing continuously from the moment it matures. In tropical and subtropical climates, a single moringa tree generates over 600 pods and tens of thousands of leaves per year. In temperate climates, it's grown as a fast-maturing annual, and the speed is real. Seed to harvestable height in 60 days. Dried moringa leaf contains roughly 7 times the vitamin C of oranges, 4 times the calcium of milk, and 3 times the potassium of bananas. Now, those figures come from peer-reviewed nutritional analysis and SWAO technical documentation. The more you cut the leaves, the more the plant pushes new growth. Every part is edible. Leaves, immature pods, flowers, seeds. The seeds are also used as a natural water purification agent across parts of Africa and South Asia. This is not a trendy supplement plant. This is one of the most nutrient-dense food crops available to a home grower, and it matures in the time it takes most vegetables to establish. Crop 1. Chaya/tree spinach, Icenidoscalis acanithifolius. 200 pounds of leafy greens, 1 plant, per year. Chaya, also called tree spinach, is a perennial native to Central America and Mexico that is virtually unknown outside those regions. Once established in a warm climate, it produces harvestable leaves continuously, year-round. In cooler climates, it performs as a vigorous annual with substantial seasonal yields. The nutritional profile is extraordinary. Higher protein than conventional spinach, more calcium per gram than dairy milk, high iron. It has been evaluated by agricultural research institutions for its potential as a space-based food system crop, because the yield-to-space ratio is that remarkable. One critical detail, and this is non-negotiable: cook the leaves before eating. Raw chaya contains hydrocyanic compounds. 5 minutes of heat, sautéed, steamed, added to soup, neutralizes them completely. Cooked chaya is safe, nutritious, and genuinely delicious. This is the detail that separates the people who successfully grow chaya from the ones who don't. Cook it. Every time, without exception. I promised you this at the very beginning. Here it is. This applies to every single crop on this entire list, without exception. The single most universal yield killer in home gardens is soil temperature instability. Most gardeners plant, water, and fertilize, and never address the fact that their soil is losing moisture rapidly, swinging between hot and cold, and forcing plant roots into constant stress instead of growth. The fix is mulch, and you can get it for free. A 3 to 4 inch layer of organic mulch, wood chips, straw-dried leaves, applied around the base of every plant on this list, does 3 things simultaneously. It locks soil moisture so you water up to 50% less frequently. It regulates soil temperature so roots stay in their productive range, and as it breaks down, it feeds the soil biology that drives nutrient uptake. Call any local tree service company and ask if they have wood chip loads available. Most will deliver to you free, they pay to dispose of it otherwise. You turn their waste into the single most effective yield tool in your garden. Every crop on this list responds to mulch. Every single one. A lot of people are going to watch this video and not plant a single one of these. Not because they don't want to, because I don't have enough space. feels like a real barrier. Or I don't know where to find these seeds. Or I'll do it next season. I want you to hear this as clearly as possible. You don't need a large yard. You don't need a perfect setup. You don't need to grow all 13. You need one raised bed, one container, or one corner of a fence, and one of these crops. Malabar spinach on a trellis, moringa in a pot, chayote on a fence you already have. Every year you wait is another year of full grocery store prices for food you could be growing from the same space. That's not pressure. That's just math. Pick one. Plant it this season. If this video gave you something real today, subscribe right now. Not at the end. Not later. Because later has a way of becoming never. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications. Every single week, this channel gives you exactly what you need to grow more food from less space with less wasted effort. That is the only thing we do here. Drop a comment right now and tell me, where in the world are you watching from? And which crop on this list are you planting first? I read every single comment. Every one. Where are you watching from and which one is going in the ground? Let's bring this together one final time. Yet a Warrigal Greens thrives in drought and heat where every other leafy green fails, and it spreads all summer without replanting. Groundnut, a forgotten survival crop with 3 times the protein of potatoes, and it improves your soil while it produces. Oca, the most colorful root vegetable in existence, with a flavor that transforms in sunlight after harvest. Chayote, 50 to 150 fruits from one vine, planted as a whole fruit, producing from shoots to roots. Perennial Leek, when planted offset, becomes 8 harvestable leeks, and repeats that multiplication every single year. Okinawa Spinach, the more you harvest it, the more productive it gets. Antioxidant-dense and ornamental simultaneously. Loofah, a food crop hiding in plain sight as a bath product. 20 to 40 fruits per vine with 0 waste. Focata, a protein-rich perennial shrub, harvested every 2 to 3 weeks only forces you waste years from the same root. Means sweet potato greens, 2 harvests from one plant. Weeks of leafy greens before the roots are even close to ready. Cranberry hibiscus, sold as decoration, grown as food for centuries. Tart, productive and a pollinator magnet. Malabar spinach climbs vertically, harvests every 10 days, and thrives in the exact heat that destroys regular spinach. Moringa, 6 feet tall in 60 days, 7 times the vitamin C of oranges from one backyard tree. Chaya, 200 pounds of greens per plant per year, the highest yield leafy crop most Western gardeners have never grown. Your garden space is not too small, it's just not planted yet. I'll see you in the next one.